Good evening, team. Tonight, I'm going to talk about overcoming your fear of failure in Ironman training and why it's okay to struggle and keep going. And if you've ever felt intimidated by this large goal, which it is a large goal, or discouraged by any setbacks that you may have experienced while training for this goal, I suggest you listen in because this is going to be a good one for you and learning how to develop the right mindset to approach this race and to overcome adversity and challenges along your training. So, let's get right into it. So, if you don't mind, I would like to start this with a story. And this is my personal story of one of the major setbacks that I had when training for my first Ironman. So, the year was 2019, about a week before Halloween, and I signed up for my very first Ironman. I was so excited because I finally worked up the courage to, put my money on the line, put my money where my mouth was, because I've been talking about this for probably like months prior, saying like, oh yeah, I could totally do an Ironman. Yeah. No, like it won't be too hard for me. And like, just being like cocky and braggy with some of my friends. And finally, put my money where my mouth was, like I said, and I signed up for the race. And there was this real sense of pride of overcoming the fear that I was holding on myself. I had a fear that, what if I'm not able to do this? This seems like insane for somebody to be able to do like a swim, 2.4 miles, 112-mile bike ride, and then a full marathon. It seemed completely insane. But when I bought that ticket, I really took a huge gamble on myself, and I was proud of myself for doing that. Fast forward literally like 4 days to Halloween, and I'm out surfing with some of my buddies, and it's a huge hurricane swell, very dangerous side current, very dangerous riptide, and I'll spare the gory details, but basically I hyperextended and tore through every ligament in my left knee. And as I could have died, and thank God that I didn't. I made it out. I crawled up the beach, and I was sitting there at sunrise with my body completely soaked in pain. And I looked out, and I took a big sigh, and I realized this was gonna be some painful journey. Because somewhere in my head, I believed that I was still gonna do this race somehow in 2020, and this knee injury would have been no factor. And when I tell you that over the next week or 2 weeks, when the reality of the situation sank in, I was starting to realize how serious this became, because I was unable to walk. And fast forwarding to highlights, I could hardly walk for the next year to year and a half after that, which meant that I obviously postponed my 2020 race, but I also had to postpone my 2021 race because I deferred it just the 1 year. So as a result of this setback in my knee, and I was actively trying to train myself up to even be able to do anything in the world of sports again, it took me over a year and a half until I could start physically training again for this goal, like actually training, because I wasn't able to even jog down the block, let alone a mile, let alone 26 miles. And if I couldn't bike because my knee would click so much it would be in pain, and I couldn't swim because, again, too much pain. By the time 2022 came around and I was just starting to be able to jog, I committed to myself that I was not going to defer this next race, and if I'm gonna fail, then I'm gonna fail on the course in July. And I held myself true to that, and I pushed with pretty much everything I had. I became like a psycho in terms of dedication to this race, and honestly, I made it happen. And race week came. I felt so afraid. Like, the fear of failure was ridiculous. I was sitting there at dinner with my family, and like, I seemed like a different person to them. And some of my cousins even said it to each other, not with me around, obviously, because like they didn't want to discourage me, but a lot of them were saying like, oh, we do not like how Nick seems this week. He seems like completely different person. I was like scared out of my mind, and I was so in my head. But because of that pact, and because of all this mental work that I was doing, like preparing myself for the idea of failure and being okay with that, and not allowing the failure to be any part my own, and knowing that this wasn't the end all be all, having like a longer term vision for myself in this sport. Like, knowing if I failed this week, then I'm not going to stop trying until I make it through. It's already been too much of a commitment for me. That continuing to push through every barrier that came before me in terms of negative thoughts, pain, people telling you that you shouldn't do it, or you can't do it, or it's impossible, because I dealt with all those, and I heard all those from myself and from other people. By pushing through those setbacks and those struggles, I could tell you firsthand, you're going to become a stronger person, and over time you're gonna become the type of person that's able to do the exact thing that you want to. And this applies to everything. The amount of mental strength that not only training for and completing that first Ironman gave me, but the second one too, and now this third one. You can't even understand it by somebody telling it to you. It's just one of those things that over years of consistently putting in the effort, one day, if you allow yourself to reflect back on how you were, you'll see this great big change in yourself, and the amount of pride that you'll feel when you realize that, and the amount of confidence that you'll feel, or even noticing yourself as a result of that, is out of this world. So if you're feeling a fear of failure, like, you're not alone. Even in these next level goals that I'm having, I'm still occasionally confronted with this fear that, hey, like, there's a real possibility that this isn't in the cards for you this time. But the key nuance there is the phrase "this time," because what you learn, the longer you spend time in this sport, and the longer you spend time thinking and working on your own mental strength, and this happens naturally as you spend hours and hours in your head, on the bike in pain, on a run in pain, swimming. Not to make this sound like it's all pain, but it's definitely not all fun and games. And all that time that you spend in your head doing the work is what changes you and makes you a stronger person. And so now, as those fears come up in me, and the real possibility of not being ready this time is fine with me, because as you continue to push through, and as you continue to learn more about yourself, if you know yourself as the type of person who's going to just continue working, continue pushing in this direction, then it really doesn't matter if next July I don't go sub 12, because Not for lack of effort. I'm still going to put every effort forward to get there. But if it doesn't happen next July, I'll let you know something. It's definitely going to happen the following July. And if it doesn't happen that following July, not to contradict that definitely, then it's going to happen the next time. And you have to keep working with that in your head. Like, you have to keep trying and keep pushing. And knowing that you'll never stop, knowing that you're going to be relentless in your pursuit of this goal, takes this time element and completely obliterates it. And it takes this idea of failure and it completely warps the definition, because the only way to really fail is to stop and to quit. And if you already know in your mind that you're not going to quit, just like in my first race when I said, they can pull me off the course, they can DQ me, I could pass out for some medical reason, and those will be the only way that I'm going to stop moving forward on this course. If you tell yourself something like that, I'm never going to stop, I'm never going to quit trying, then it's impossible for you to fail. And this is the same thing in Ironman, this is the same thing in business, this is the same thing in life. If you tell yourself, I'm just never going to stop, then failure is no longer a concept. Because if you've ever played a video game, like I play games once in a while, and if you played a really hard one like Elden Ring and you die pretty much like 100 times on a boss fight, but then you beat him on the 101th time, like, you moved on. You made it to the next boss. Like, you beat that guy, and now it's time to move forward. Nobody cares how many times you died at that point if you beat the game. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing in all of this. So don't be afraid. If your fear is preventing you from even signing up for your first race, get the ticket if it's financially responsible for you. Like, I'm not going to recommend you do something that's financially irresponsible. But if you have the means, sign up. If you're afraid and you've already signed up, it's normal. Keep going. Like, don't quit. You're going to become a stronger, more capable person at the other side of this. And if you're near your first race, then you're supposed to be nervous. You're supposed to have jitters. You're supposed to feel a little uneasy, a little awkward. Just remember that you can only fail if you stop, so keep moving forward.